Hello everyone and welcome to the December Anglo-Irish AstroGeeks. Unfortunately Neil Norman can't make it this month. He's got Wi-Fi problems, but if he manages to fix them I'm sure he'll join us later in the show. So my name's Nick Yvetz.
I'm Anne Dunn from Astronomy Ireland.
And I'm David Moore, also from Astronomy Ireland.
It's been quite an eventful day with weather. I went online and I did see the Great Conjunction. It's going to get closer to Christmas. They said Christmas Eve is supposed to be the really best one, so I think I'm probably going to most definitely get some telescope time, and it should be even closer. But I did share a link with Anne and David earlier, and it looked quite nice actually. I was using Slew's T2 ultra wide field telescope, and I got a nice image of both Saturn and Jupiter and the Galilean moons, which was even better. Wasn't expecting that one. But yes, it was quite nice. Have either of you got out to see it yet?
Last night I had a really lovely view. We went up to the summit near us, and we had a lovely view across Dublin Bay. And we had, they were with the naked eye last night, you could hardly tell them apart. They were very close, but luckily we had a few telescopes up there and we got a nice view of the two, and you could see the rings and the moons and everything. Amazing sight, really nice.
Yes, it's going to be the best one for quite a long time. I think the last time it was this close was back in Galileo's time.
That's right, yeah, 1623.
And did nobody record it then, David?
Well, the problem was, from our latitude, i.e. Europe at least, if you look at how high it was when the sun set, which is going to be the earliest chance to see it, it was 4 degrees up back in 1623, whereas it's 14 degrees up this year. And that makes all the difference because it gives the sun a chance to set. Trying to see anything at 4 degrees is practically impossible. If you were near the equator, you would have had a better time, but considering the telescope had only started in Europe by Galileo using it for astronomy in 1609, I doubt there are many telescopes, if any, at the equator back then. So I haven't heard of any historical records of anybody having seen it. They would have been able to predict it back then, and I'm guessing nobody ever did see it in a telescope. And this is the first time where they've been, say, less than 10 arc minutes apart. The good news is, though, you only have to wait till 2080. The bad news is they're only 8 degrees up at sunrise. So that's two pieces of bad news. First of all, 8 degrees versus 14 degrees, they'll be lower. And secondly, it's in the morning, so you'll have to get up at 6 a.m. or so. Will anybody bother?
I don't know.
There's another one, though, in 2417 when they're just 5 arc minutes apart.
I think we'll leave that one to Captain Kirk.
Yeah, I haven't spoiled it for myself by checking if it's a morning occurrence or an evening occurrence. I'll wait till closer to the date.
When you're listening to the show, I do know that there's plenty of videos going to be available on the internet, and I do know that the National Youth Space Centre, which is using the observation site at D.O. Haing Optical Astronomy Observatory, they are planning to broadcast it live, so this will definitely be on there. Now I will go back onto their site and have a look to see if there's a link up, and I'll put it into the show notes.
Nick, did you say Christmas Eve is closest?
That's what I've been hearing.
I've run the ephemeris on NASA's JPL site, which is the ultimate source used by all the research astronomers, and it's definitely at the evening universal time, 21st of December, 6.1 arc minutes. And I've even corrected that for what's called topocentric view, which is the exact view from this latitude and longitude. Roughly the British Isles would be very, very similar. So it's definitely tonight.
Yeah.
And they're 9 arc minutes apart tomorrow night. So 6.1 tonight, 9 arc minutes tomorrow night.
Yeah.
And it'll just increase from then. But one interesting thing I did was have a look at your little finger held at arm's length is roughly 1 degree wide. And they'll stay 1 degree wide until apart, within 1 degree anyway, until New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
So that might be what's doing the rounds. They're going to be within, say, a moon diameter perhaps by Christmas Eve, and a little finger width by New Year's Eve.
Well, this is what I was told had been said by all the TV weather people. Because you know how they are. They always pick up on these events and...
they get it wrong.
Yeah. according to the weather people, it's supposed to be at its closest on Christmas Eve, but JPL Horizons is fairly accurate.
Yes.
To be honest, I've had problems with their information in the past. So when I've been doing comet imaging, so I don't really use them for that type of thing anymore. I used the live sky.
Well, the problem with comet imaging is that a lot of the orbital information they rely on is from the MPC, and people in there are not updating often enough. There are some amateur groups that do it a little bit better, and it's a bit of a bone of contention. The actual software itself is extremely accurate as long as you give it the right orbit elements. I don't think we have to worry about the orbit of Jupiter and Saturn. And also other planetarium packages I've run all show the same thing, 6 arc minutes today. And it is actually very widely quoted on the internet as 6 arc minutes today. Although I've seen space.com get it wrong, and I wrote them a little complaint.
Good. Because normally most people, if it's on space.com, it's got to be true.
Not always.
Because I've picked up some stories from there which have been quite good and quite accurate. But no, I tend to use the Sky Live more than anything now, because I used to find that if I used the RA and DEC from JPL, my images would be off. With the Sky Live, for some reason, my comets tend to be dead center of an image, which is kind of useful when it's something really frightening like a 17th magnitude comet.
It's probably got whoever's updating the Sky Live database is an amateur who's keen on the whole subject and not a government paid official who's just doing their job.
That's quite possible.
It's a real shame that we can't keep track on new comets accurately. Sometimes you see, we had it with NEOWISE, the early orbit.
Yeah.
I actually complained to JPL, and the guy came in on a Saturday and updated the orbital elements for all the comets, because somebody is supposed to do it, I think, only once a month, which is ridiculously infrequent for comets.
Yeah. And
once they updated it, agreed with everything else.
Well, the other place I go is Seiichi Yoshida's site.
Oh, yes. Arias.net.
Yes. He has got some really cracking good stuff there. In fact, we use it on Comet Watch. It's always one of our top links. Basically, because if he says it's going to be there and the mag gives a magnitude, he's pretty spot on with the magnitudes as well, which is a nice thing.
Yeah.
Then I can just go back and...
You're absolutely right. That would be my go-to comet site.
I did actually ask him to come on the show, but I don't think his English is all that great, which is a shame, really, because it would be really fascinating to have him talk about his website. But my Japanese isn't that great either.
I've had some correspondence with him on email, but never spoke to him, so certainly can type English good enough, but big difference pronouncing it to maybe using Google Translate.
That's one of the reasons I've ended up having listed as my languages to learn as being Korean, Japanese, Cantonese or Mandarin, because using Google Translate, it can go extremely wrong.
Can be hilarious as well.
Oh yes, even translating it by hand the hard way, I still make slip-ups because I'm just not used to thinking in a completely different way. So that's why I'm learning the languages. I have a reasonable experience with Hangul, and I can just about get away with my posts in Japanese. The radio amateurs I talk to as well from Japan very nicely correct my Japanese, but for them it's just a huge compliment anyway.
That you're trying, yeah.
So and I find that with the Koreans too. In fact, I'm at the point where I've had it suggested to me to sign up for the Korean Astronomy and Space Science Institute. So that should be...
Wow.
I know one of the planetary scientists there. We got talking, and he suggested that I join them and the Korean Korean Astronomical Society. So that is my thing for next year. That and joining RAS.
New Year's resolution.
Yeah, already. Yeah. But it's interesting.
You asked earlier about views of the comet. Not comet, the conjunction. I've been monitoring it since they were in the same binocular field of view, and then taking the telescope out every night, waiting to see when can I fit the two of them into the same 8-inch telescope field of view, which happened sometime last week. And it was amazing to see the rings of Saturn at one end of the field of view, about 65 times magnification, and Jupiter on the other end, with a couple of moons sticking in as well. And after that for me then, that was the end game. I think I managed to get it almost every night except tonight, the actual night of closest approach. I'm sure we'll see it drifting further apart tomorrow. JPL horizons be proved right. And here we are, 800-year wait for this, and the weather ruins it.
Yep, where's James T. Kirk when you need him?
Yeah.
I often wonder about Newgrange. How long did the builders have to wait before they knew if it worked or not? Because, you know, how many days is it cloudy or rainy here?
The weather way back then, there's evidence that the weather was actually better than it is now. But I'm sure it wasn't perfect either. And of course, the good thing about the solstice is they're running the live view from inside Newgrange on 3 mornings, because the sunlight will still come down the corridor, because the sun is basically standing still, solstice. And so it doesn't move much on the horizon at this time of year. So you've actually probably, if you're building it, you could probably do it a week either side. For it to be cloudy 14 days in a row is probably not happening very often.
Okay, so...
And they could have refined the position over centuries.
Yeah.
Which case, plenty of time to get it right. I guess the pace of life was a lot slower back then.
Oh, most definitely. And of course, if there was a problem, they could fix it.
Yeah.
Because they were probably making marks that would show them where they need to make any changes in time for next year.
True.
Yeah, you probably just do it with a few wooden posts at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then build a 200,000-ton monument thereafter.
Well, thinking about it, and it is kind of relevant because there's still the belief that Stonehenge and Newgrange had astronomical, more than just solstice means, that they were used for astronomy. So basically, there was probably a wooden henge. Certainly at Stonehenge, they found evidence for one. So why shouldn't there be a wooden version put in place to guide the builders?
First.
So...
Yeah. Actually, there's a sister monument, another mound nearby called Nouth, and they have a model of a wooden henge, which was on the spot where one had been found. So you're going in the right direction there.
But it's quite interesting, really, to look at these things, because they understood the progression of the moon. Sorry, the moon, the sun, and the stars. They had good ideas about it. They knew what to look for, which heralded the change of season. So they were certainly probably capable of using astronomy to work out exactly where the calendar should be in reality.
There are probably clever people. I mean, there'd be very little biological difference between brains over 5,000 years. And I've always meant to put this to an actual archaeologist or maybe an anthropologist, that the people in these islands were probably the most intelligent people on the planet, because civilization came from the Middle East, spanned out across Europe after the ice receded at the end of the Ice Age. And the first settlers certainly on this furthest most island of Ireland would have had probably a few mild winters like we normally do, and then a winter like we had in 2015, when the temperatures got down to minus 15 degrees Celsius, or that 2010? No, it was 2010, I think. Minus 15 Celsius. And, you know, I reckon they got killed off. And that probably happened for decades, centuries, maybe even millennia, until some bright spark figured out the calendar and the solstice trick. And then they realized they could plant crops and hunker down for really severe winters. That was the most intelligent thing that had been done by the human race up to then, would be a postulate. Be interested to see what the actual professionals think, which would mean, we're descended from people who have a higher brain power than everybody else.
Well, if you look at it, we've actually decided foolishly to put all our brains on the internet, and we still get it wrong. If you look at some of the web pages that are out there, it's really frightening to think that people actually believe half the stuff they put up on their websites. So maybe there's a good point. We have slightly regressed. Maybe they were perhaps more intelligent. They certainly weren't stuck on their cell phones or anything. They probably were better at planning. Well,
it's always a question of believing your sources. If you take it from people who've studied the subject for decades at university level, or you just listen to somebody ranting on who's made stuff up randomly and there's no evidence for it, then if you believe the latter source, shame on you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I personally will go with not only experts who are accredited, but also those that can show me the facts behind it if I ask.
Yeah, you need a trusted source.
Well, I was going to refer us back to our conversation before we started the show. A certain object which crops up on a regular basis every now and again, because people believe they also need to wear tinfoil hats to protect themselves from the government.
Yes, yeah. Maybe they do, but we need to see the proof of that first.
Absolutely.
Let's
they want prove it works to me.
Else, we need to provide it to them. Yeah. Let's hope it doesn't come back to bite us when all the anti-vaxxers convince a sufficient number of people not to take the vaccine, and then we don't get the herd immunity because of basically stupidity.
Well, I was talking to one of my friends in India earlier today, and he's saying that it's still bad, but there is beginning to be an immunity build-up, and and the vaccines will be the ultimate in pushing that through. So, and I think a lot of it is we both know where this we all know where this stupidity over vaccines comes from, really. But it's sad, really, because when you consider we routinely operate in low Earth orbit, and yet we haven't got the sense to realise that vaccines aren't there to implant microchips into us.
Yeah,
that's
or viruses are caused or even linked to 5G masts.
Yes, that was. Oh boy, here we go. But
maybe we should change the subject. This is not astronomy.
Well, we could say it's astronomy because the idea of life coming from outer space in comets is beginning to have a bit of a resurgence, really. Panspermia is coming back because we're now finding amino acids in comets and on asteroids.
Yeah. So
it's the building blocks of life. Even viruses have RNA in them. So there is a lot to be said, and I'm pretty sure that Whipple, Chandrasekhar, and Hoyle are all happy because they're slightly being vindicated at last.
Yeah, I think there's a big difference between amino acids and protein than any form of RNA or DNA.
Yeah.
And that said, though, I think it has been shown that DNA could be blasted off the surface of the Earth and make its way to Mars and vice versa.
Yeah.
And that has happened. So the question is, have we cross-seeded each other? If we do find Martians, well, either maybe we're the Martians or they're Earthlings.
Ooh, quite a mess in the pit.
Yeah.
But seriously, the thing is though, finding amino acids in space, we know that some things can actually survive long term in space. What some of the experiments on the ISS have shown that there are bacteria that can go dormant until they're back into a more inviting environment.
Yep.
So, and of course the whole phosphine thing on Venus recently makes you want to think about what did we send there on our probes. And of course, in the era of Viking, the clean rooms weren't that clean. Certainly not as clean as they are now for sending probes to Mars or Europa, which is what's coming up in the next few years as well. So what did we send? What kind of things have we already sent to Mars via the Viking landers that may have found a nice little new home somewhere on the planet, maybe underground, is waiting to be found? Now, do we classify them as Martians or what?
Yeah, and how will we know?
Well, I'm not an expert in DNA, but I'd say the level of DNA knowledge that the human race has these days probably can be determined. Is it likely Earth DNA or something that evolves in a totally different environment? But it'd be interesting to ask, what would you call them, a DNA expert?
Astrobiologists?
Or even someone who just understands how, the way they can trace the different races that came to make the current human race by DNA tracing. Can they do the same thing on bacteria that may have or may not, or show? Will they be able to show, or can they even say now there is no way that we could show whether they came from the Earth or not? It'd be an interesting question to ask them.
It would be.
Yeah.
I'm sure they know the answer if we find the right person.
I would think on SaganNet they have Ask an Astrobiologist.
Oh. And they could always ask somebody else who I'm sure they will know someone who would know the definitive answer.
Absolutely.
We can find somebody and get them to talk to us.
But I hadn't thought about what you said, which was that the phosphine on Venus, if it is from life, could be from Earth contamination. That happened in my mind.
Yeah, I actually did think that too. When it came along first, I thought the same. We've had things going into the clouds, and we had, only a few weeks ago there was something about how bacteria can survive on outside spacecraft by grouping together. So the outer ones are all zapped by cosmic rays, but the interior ones are saved by numbers, I suppose.
Yeah.
They can, so it's quite possible that we actually transported our own bacteria over to Venus.
I don't know if you all both remember the Sky at Night when they broke the story. The scientist on the show showing that succulents are immune to sulfuric acid.
I couldn't believe that. Did you see that one, David? Yeah,
I did. Yeah, no, I watched it. Great interest.
Who knows? Maybe there's something there that's resistant to. There's like a succulent here that can resist the damage from sulfuric acid. And as he pointed out on the show, this sulfuric acid is extremely concentrated, and it's not your regular lab sulfuric acid.
Yeah.
So, and the plant survived and just literally brushed off, having the extremely concentrated sulfuric acid applied to its leaves. Yeah. So,
and there are other extremophiles as well, like the ones I think live in waters with
black smokers,
large concentrations of arsenic.
Yeah, black smokers at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah, so I mean, if you give the bacteria long enough, they'll eventually mutate into ones that can probably survive anything.
And then the water bears, the little tardigrades that seem to be able to live on the top of Everest, or they've survived living outside the space station and been revived.
And there were some swabs done of some of the Apollo astronauts who brought back, was it pieces of one of the, forgotten which satellite it was, that landed on the moon, and there were viable bacteria. They've been sitting there for years.
Probably one of the Rangers.
Yes. Yeah.
Of course, the other thing is the real kicker on the phosphine story was that when Pioneer went there in late 60s, early 70s, one of the Pioneer missions to Venus, in the petaflops of data, they found the same signal as the Cardiff team did. It was there.
That's good.
It just hadn't. No one had found it until they went looking because of this report. Basically, it was like, this is what. Hang on a minute. They compared it, and it was pretty much the same signal. And this was detected by a Pioneer, and Pioneer is at that point weren't as perhaps as advanced as Voyager, or it wouldn't have been as advanced as Voyager certainly was, technology-wise. So, if Pioneer can pick up the signal from orbit, how much else has been missed in the data to date? Because everybody's just taking random samples instead of perhaps a project to really seriously analyze what was sent back. Maybe we're going to see stuff that is really going to cause us to kick ourselves because it was there all along and we were just not intelligent enough to look or spend the time.
I suppose there's so much data comes back. You hear about missions that have finished, and like Rosetta that we were all talking about recently, and even New Horizons. There's still so much data that they haven't been able to look at. So I suppose it's the same kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You need some students to decide to look at a specific aspect of the data and find something new.
Food for thought.
Exactly. You want a job with a university? Well, here's a data set. It's going to take you the rest of your life to go through it. And if you know that find something that's going to make your name. Good luck. See you in 10 years' time. No, but seriously, there's so much that we haven't looked at on the data sets. Look at the Gaia data sets.
Yeah.
They're still finding stuff on there. They're looking at all the past stuff because they're comparing all the older missions just so that they can get a sense of how accurate the data is. And they're finding stuff that was there that was missed. What's the name of that signal? Not the Lurai signal, the Lamar signal. That goes back years. Now they're starting to find similar events in old data that's been stored for years. We've got the fast bursts, radio bursts as well. In fact, there's a nice segue.
Yeah.
So, as I say, who wants to discuss orcs?
I haven't really read it up enough to really discuss it here. But
odd radio circles.
Yeah.
I found this a little bit confusing because I suppose it's a story that has a lack of information in it rather than a great discovery. They found these things, no idea what they are. Never a few ideas what they aren't.
They did say, could it be supernova remnants? Could it be bursts of star formation?
Apparently not.
And apparently they know what they aren't. Yeah.
It's not even starburst formation. They thought there could be rings of radio emissions, sometimes seen in galaxies undergoing these intense bursts of star formation, but no, they don't see any underlying galaxy that would be hosting the star formation.
They still haven't. They said maybe like a shockwave from some explosion that they don't know, but they're quite circular. These kind of ghostly rings, and they're not. You can't see them in ordinary light. It's only in radio, isn't it?
So they're now looking at fast radio bursts. Could it be neutron star and black hole collisions? So they're now looking at gravitational waves. It's not Einstein rings, because normally radio waves from a distant galaxy would be bent into a circle by the gravitational field of a cluster of galaxies. But it's not that. They're too symmetrical. And we don't see anything at their centre, which is what you would see or expect to see.
Yeah, and I think they're also too far outside the galaxy, which tends to suggest not something to do with the galaxy. it's one of those things where in 20 years' time we look back and say, "Oh, that's what they were." It makes sense now, but head scratching time in the meantime.
And you see, two Russian scientists even suggested that they might be the throats of wormholes in space-time.
Good suggestion. Now, where's the evidence?
Yes. And of course, if that is the case, does that mean if we study them enough, we can figure out how to actually generate them? Hey, that'd give us a Stargate, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe a Nobel Prize to go with it.
Oh, definitely a Nobel Prize to go with it if you can figure out how to create a stable wormhole, and that will allow you to pop out alive and intact at the other end, and then recreate it to go home.
Unfortunately, these things always have a much more mundane explanation, like pulsars, when they were first discovered, might be little green men.
Sending signals, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a great result from the new Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, nothing. It's not. You can't see it. So this is a wonderful new. I don't know. It puts a good stamp on it anyway.
Well, yeah, because at first I thought it was an imaging artifact or a software error.
Yeah, like a lens flare nearly.
Yeah, but using other radio telescopes, they're still seeing them. So there could be objects in our galaxy, maybe a few light years across, or there could be far away in the universe, maybe millions of light years across.
I suppose this is the problem. It's just early days yet, and trying to explain what they are. Maybe it won't come like dark energy. We're still not any further down the line trying to explain that one. Even dark matter has only got a few theories with no exact evidence. So we technically don't know what most of the universe is. So minor things like orcs are just a minor thorn in our side. With a decade.
Well,
or waiting to be explained.
It's kind of interesting because we've got red elves, we've got sprites, which are atmospheric phenomena, but they are very. If you know where to look at the top of a thunderstorm, you can detect them. The ISS regularly detects them and records the information because they're of great interest down here on planet Earth. So, let's say a long time ago, no one thought that they would exist. Nobody knew what happened in a thunderstorm. And the exciting thing is that it's thought, and I don't remember where I saw this, so that there may be it may actually involve antimatter, but as I say, I don't remember the exact thing I was reading at the time. But I seem to remember positrons being mentioned. And when you've got those really exotic particles, you're talking about antimatter. Because believe it or not, when you eat a banana, you actually have a small amount of antimatter in your banana.
Really?
Yeah, it's the potassium isotope. Potassium.
When it decays?
Yeah.
Huh.
What does it produce? Positrons?
Well, trying to remember how it. Basically, what it is. Hang on, let me just do what I always do. Yeah, I'm doing it. Antimatter.
It probably is positrons because protons being 2,000 times the mass, it'd be hard to see where you get the energy to produce some of those.
Okay, so basically, bananas produce antimatter. They release one positron, which is the antimatter equivalent of an electron, every 75 minutes. This is because it's a small amount of potassium-40. As potassium-40 decays, I knew I'd got that right, it occasionally spits out a positron in the process. Oh, I remember I read that now. It was in Symmetry magazine. Which, if the uninitiated, is a cutting-edge QM and extremely high-level physics magazine. And they have some really fun topics. And one of them was about bananas at that time because of antimatter. Now, when you think about it, we've only created a small amount in the lab.
Yes, indeed.
All the antiprotons created at that Fermilab's Tevatron would only add up to about 15 nanograms. With CERN, it's about 1 nanogram. At Desweiler in Germany, approximately 2 nanograms of positrons have been produced to date. So if all the antimatter ever made by humans was annihilated at once, it wouldn't even boil a cup of tea, believe it or not.
I remember we had a speaker in from CERN, from the LHC, and we worked out roughly that the cost of antimatter is approximately the GDP of the entire world per gram.
Yeah.
So very expensive stuff.
Yeah, 1 gram of antimatter would require approximately 25 million billion kilowatt hours of energy, and that's the cost of $1 million billion.
A million, and that's roughly the GDP of the planet, yeah?
Quite likely.
Just over 100 billion these days.
Yeah, so
100 trillion, sorry, 100 trillion.
So when you think about it, it's the one thing in science fiction everybody's terrified of is antimatter. Oh, and in the real universe, because if it's equal to there is an equal amount of matter and antimatter, it self annihilates with several quanta of hard radiation. But when you have more matter to antimatter, it gets the actual result explosion is less, and 1 gram of antimatter would produce an explosion the size of a nuclear bomb.
Yeah,
and that's a gram.
That would be roughly right, because they're down at the less than 1 or 2% efficiency mark. Thermonuclear bombs, aren't they?
Yeah,
and they're only detonating a few tens of thousands of grams of material. So, and even the sun, when it converts 504 million tons a second of hydrogen to 500 million tons, it's only about 1% gets converted to pure energy. So it's a pretty inefficient process.
Oh yeah,
compared to antimatter, which would be 100% if you could bring 2 blocks together.
Yeah, and it would be almost inexhaustible supply of energy. It's clean. Mind you, it probably need to be kept inside a magnetic bottle for safety.
Yeah, very, very reliable one.
Yes. I hope we got a Scotty to look after it too.
Yeah.
But it's weird. It's one of those really weird asymmetries that exist in the universe. And saying about CERN, I remember all the concerns about, it's going to make black holes that are going to eat the Earth, mini black holes going to eat the Earth. Can't do it. Yes, they can make mini black holes, but they can't eat their way through the Earth because the actual event horizon of a mini black hole is so small, it can't feed. So the interesting thing, this is why 42 is actually the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, because it's 42 minutes a mini black hole has to live before it evaporates in Hawking radiation if it can't feed.
Right. And why can't it feed? Because its diameter is smaller than that of any subatomic particle?
But basically the event horizon is so small, it just can't take in matter.
I hadn't heard that.
That's the that, as I say, I've sat and gone through the math many years ago, and it took me 6 months. I actually did a show for astronomy.fm about it. It took me 6 months to literally go through all the science and the maths, and I sat there going through the maths. The equation's actually quite a nice little neat equation. But in the end, it does work out that 42 is the meaning of life, the universe, and everything, because that's the lifetime of a black hole unless it can feed. And the only way they could really feed would be to literally collide together and become one.
Right, yeah.
But it can't happen.
The merging can't happen either.
So whereas we know that when two neutron stars merge together, it could cause a black hole to come into existence,
right.
But that is such a huge thing in the first place, compared to the size of a black hole that would be created by CERN. They're so small that you wouldn't even notice them. So at the end of the day, then that's why the LHC has never really been a threat to life on this planet in that manner.
Right. If they told us that at the beginning, there wouldn't have been such fear about it.
Well, they did.
Did they? Did somebody work out your 6 months of maths before?
Well, yeah, because Alex Flipanenko, it was one of his courses I took.
Ah, right, yeah.
So he actually did it for a course for the Great Courses on black holes. And it was really a case of this. The CERN said quite clearly it would be very unlikely we will produce any mini black holes, and even if we do produce one or two, because they can't actually feed, and that's what allows a black hole to grow, is taking in matter. And if it exhausts the matter around it, it goes quiescent until there's a new food source. So if you look at some of the classic black holes that we have, and that we've imaged at radio wavelengths, most of them that are active have huge clouds of gas and matter falling into them. That's what allows us. We can see the search beams coming off them, for want of a better term, as they feed.
Yeah.
But once the food source goes away, they go quiescent. And until there's a new food source, nothing happens. In fact, from what I understand from the work of Penrose, Susskind, and Hawking, if after there is actually a possible time limit for how long that black hole can exist without feeding.
Because of Hawking radiation, I assume.
Well, yeah, because basically we see the event, literally when the gas heats up in the torus around the black hole as it spirals in. That is what shows us where the black hole is.
Yeah.
So if you look at Sagittarius A, that's an active black hole. And we have to look through the dust cloud at the center of our galaxy to see what's going on. We have looked at stars going around the black hole. We can see the active jets which are coming from just above the event horizon of the black hole. We know they're there because we've observed them in other galaxies. But at the end of the day, if a black hole doesn't feed, it's believed after a while it can just evaporate into Hawking radiation and cease.
Yeah, on very long timescales for supermassive black holes.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. So it's one of those really, as I say, it really got me reading up on. After I did that course, did that just to do a 1 hour show.
Is that show still available?
I don't think so. I think that's what we lost a lot of the AFM shows when the server crashed. But what I didn't realise at the time, one of the guys in the audience was actually did actually teach astrophysics, and in the chat room at the time, it was like, that was pretty good. That was quite accurate, pretty good. I didn't realise you had it in you. I don't have a degree in astrophysics, but I like to read.
Well, maybe you should recreate the show. The things that excite the public most, I find, are black holes and the Big Bang.
Yeah.
And we've had quite a few speakers talk about black holes, but they usually talk about I even went to a talk that Brian Cox gave, and he talked about black holes, but he talked about a lot of, I won't say the boring science, but the sort of clinical, academic science behind them. Whereas I think the public wanted to hear about spaghettification, the twin paradox, and the fun bits. And that sounds like a fun bit.
Yeah, there's a really good book by Kip Thorne, Space Time Warps. And, hang on a second, let me do my Google thing, because I actually have the book. It was my bedtime book for a long time.
Yeah, I've seen him talk live, and he gave a talk, it must be 20 years ago in Dublin, and it was all about gravitational waves, which back then, it didn't look like the technology would work to detect the incredibly tiny distances. But when he finished the talk, it was over an hour long, you left the room thinking, all the future Nobel Prizes in astronomy are going to come from gravitational waves, and why would anybody want to study anything else? And then I thought, have I just been brainwashed by Kip Thorne? He was proved right. Now he's got his Nobel Prize.
Yeah. Well, the book is Black Holes and Time Warps, Einstein's Outrageous Legacy. Now, if you're going to go out and buy this, I'm going to advise you right now, it is about 2, maybe 3 inches thick.
Right.
There's not too much mathematics in it. It was originally published back in 1994. It's described as an illustrated overview of the history and development of black hole theory from its roots in Newtonian mechanics until the early 1990s.
Very good.
And interestingly, he followed that book with The Science of Interstellar in 2014.
That thing, yes.
That thing.
Did you enjoy that movie?
It was too slow.
I also thought it was too schmaltzy and Hollywoody. It would have been a great movie with real astrophysics in it.
Yes.
Had they not tried to claim that love was another force in the universe. That just ruined it for me.
I think that's probably one of the reasons I really enjoy Stargate SG-1 so much. Because they actually did talk about real science at times. Because in one episode, they've got an event horizon of a black hole extruding into into Stargate Command via a Stargate, and they were talking about event horizons, explaining them about time distortion and everything like that. So there were times on the show that they actually got really good science coming out. And I suppose most of us. Well, I know that I certainly got enthused by Star Trek, but it was Patrick, Arthur C. Clarke, and this chap called James Burke.
Ah, yes, James Burke.
And they would sit there. Sorry, Anne?
That's the TV presenter, James Burke, no?
Yes.
Tomorrow's World or one of those.
That's it.
He of Connections.
He went on to produce great series.
Yes, here are Connections 1, 2, and 3. But they presented the science in a great format. They didn't. I saw some of the American show for the Apollo, and it was boring. But when you've got 3 people who can explain science in an understandable way to Joe Public and not get lost in the actual mathematics, then you get people paying attention, and that's what did it for me. So, as I say, even to this day, he now has a knowledge website, James Burke's knowledge site or something. I forget what it's called, but it's good. It's full of real information. So
is he still active?
He's still alive. Yeah, he's still active.
I haven't heard anything from him.
Yeah,
in years. Yeah, and this is a site that's kept up to date.
It
recently?
seems to be reasonably up to date. Yes.
Right.
It's a website, is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
James
I've
Burke.
just written it down to remind me to check it out.
Me too. Knowledge site.
Well, I liked it because it really... K-Web. Here we go. Welcome to the homepage of the James Burke Institute for the Innovation in Education, its flagship project, the Knowledge Web.
The Knowledge Web.
Yeah, it's k-web.org.
Nice and easy to remember.
Yeah.
Great. Have that down now.
Yeah,
Check that out.
but the thing is, he's insistent that it's accurate, and he's finding innovative ways to use educational technology. It's Knowledge Web today is an activity rather than a website, an expedition in time, space, and technology to map the interior landscape of human thought and experience. That's how it's described on the website.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at it here now, yeah. Very good. Oh,
I
he's on
wonder
Facebook
why
now.
he's not still broadcasting.
I think he came back for Apollo 11 50th because
I saw him around that time.
he's the only surviving member of the BBC Apollo coverage team, really.
Yeah, that would be about right, yes.
Look at a picture of him here now.
Yes.
He still has the trademark eyebrows.
Yep. And it was just the way he projected the information he was giving you. He didn't just stand there and go, "Blah, blah, blah, blah." This is what happens, this is why it happens, this is how it happens. And I think that's something that we're lacking in science at the moment. We really...
Very good.
He's right up to date as well on Facebook here.
Yeah.
All right, I'll be definitely following that now. Great. Every day's a school day.
Yep, exactly. I'm taking languages. When I was off work for a whole month, I started work on my language courses. How do you learn a foreign language? Watch a movie in the language. I cheated a bit with subtitles, but it actually does get your head around the language as it's supposed to be spoken. So,
well, I might not help you very much, but I remember we brought in the astronaut Georgi Grechko in 1991 when the European Space Agency were looking for an astronaut corps. About 700 people in Ireland applied for the job. I think mainly because back in 91, houses probably cost £30,000 approximately, and the salary was £60,000, and it was tax-free for 4 years.
Yeah.
I think people would have done anything for that. But they paid for a Russian cosmonaut, Georgi Grechko, who had been on Mir for around 100 days, I think, in total. And he spoke, I can't remember, 14 languages, I think it was. And we asked him what was the secret. And he says, well, all you really need to do is learn 10 key words, and you can survive in that particular country. And that's what he did. I'm sure once you've got the 10, you pick up an 11th and a 12th, etc. So rather than going on a formal training course, that was his technique.
Yeah.
Wow. And once you've learned one language, they come easier. But would you not find, Nick, that you get mixed up? I'm inclined to do that with, say, French and Spanish sometimes.
I think really it's a case of how you got your mind set. Because if I'm working on something in Korean, having Korean friends, having Japanese friends and Chinese friends, I sometimes talk to them on Facebook anyway, so my mind makes the switch, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Because you're talking to them and following them, you tend to think. You have to teach yourself to think the same way. Here in Northern Europe, we have roughly the same way of thinking.
Except for German with the verbs at the end.
Yeah, but
still, I know
it's really a case of you have to learn the culture.
But this is going to help you now with using, with the telescope in Korea. Is that what you were saying earlier? Started?
It started because I wanted to go back and finish my planetary science degree.
Okay.
And really, if you're going into planetary science, you're not just going to be using your university's equipment. You're going to be talking and dealing with other universities, and I suppose it's just the way I think. I always find if you take the time to learn how to speak, even if it's enough to get you safely through a conversation at tourist level, but if you learn the people's culture that you're going to be working with, it makes whatever you're doing so much easier.
Yeah.
I suppose it would be like the classic one would be from Star Trek, offering to shake Mr. Spock's hand, because Vulcans don't touch people. So
knowing those little things, yeah.
It's being able to work as a team member, and not just as someone who's going to insist that you speak English to me.
Best of luck with it. It's a big project, isn't it?
I suppose my attitude is I am not going to ever submit to letting my mind get lazy and go to sleep. It keeps my mind busy.
Yeah.
So learning languages is fun, and they're now saying it's actually a way to prevent Alzheimer's or dementia setting in. Is learn a language. Or if you've learned one language, go learn a second one, because it keeps your mind alert. And it works. It's not just something that elderly people should be doing. It's something young people. You can get dementia or Alzheimer's at any age, really.
Yeah.
But by learning languages, you keep your mind active, and we are getting lazy because we can just pick up a phone that can now do most of the things our computers can do, and we can go tap, 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 and then we're talking to somebody on the other side of the world.
True, and you have knowledge at your fingertips, but not necessarily in the grey matter.
Yeah. Wisdom has to be... Knowledge is freely available, but wisdom has to be earned.
That's a nice one.
But...
Well, do you know, we forgot to actually mention that today is the winter solstice day, because when people hear this, it'll be in a couple of days' time. Did we actually say that earlier on, or did we not?
I think we did, yes, because we discussed archaeoastronomy, yeah.
But because I just wanted to say about Newgrange that maybe people in Britain wouldn't have heard of it maybe as much. They'd be aware of Stonehenge, but not about Newgrange. And we can boast that it's slightly older than Stonehenge. Newgrange is. It's a passage grave which is aligned to the winter solstice sun. So when the sun is rising, it shines down the passage on the new year, on the solstice day, and the day before and after that, and that's the only time of the year. And it reaches right down into the chamber at the very end of the passage. And normally they allow a few people in. Maybe, I don't know. Do you know how many it is, Dave? It's about 10 people maybe can get in.
I think I heard 30, but it might be 3 days, 10 each.
Oh, right. It's small enough, but it's really dark. It's pitch dark inside, but the sun shines all the way along this passage, which is 85 meters in diameter. Well, that doesn't give you the length. 19.
The length of the passage is 19 meters. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's quite far, and so if you're not there, but what I'm quite trying to say is that people should try and visit it when COVID is over, because it's closed at the moment, obviously. You go in and they give you an idea of what it's like. You can go any time of the year, and they switch off all the lights. So when you're inside, you're in total darkness, and then they use artificial light to represent the sun coming through this light box and shining up. And it's quite fascinating. Everybody kind of oohs and ahs, and it's definitely worth a visit whenever. It probably won't be this year, but I'm talking 2021, but maybe the year after.
Yeah. Well, also there's Maze Howe, which is a chambered cairn in the Orkneys, which is built for the same thing as well.
Yeah. And one in Wales. I'm not going to try and pronounce that one. Bryn Haley Dew. Probably totally wrong.
Not bad. So, close enough.
Yeah, so a lot of them were working on that at the time, as we were saying earlier about them being quite clever, They also, and similar to Stonehenge, they brought rocks from like 70 kilometers away or something. Big, huge stones and small ones from different parts of the country. And
there's also the standing stones of Sturness, also in the Orkneys.
Yes. Yeah, actually, the Orkneys have a lot of stuff there, don't they? They have probably the most concentrated amount. But so it's just and by the way, if anybody hasn't heard of it and would like to get an idea, if you just Google on YouTube, winter solstice dawn at Newgrange, County Meath, Ireland, you probably don't have to put all that in, and it'll come up, and it's really nice.
They've been recording the live shows over the last couple of mornings, and if you go to YouTube and just search for OPW, which stands for Office of Public Works, that's the government body in Ireland responsible for looking after monuments and those kinds of things. So Office of Public Works, just in the YouTube search bar. The two shows are already there because I missed the start of the second one this morning and watched it, and I watched yesterday's one as well. So hopefully they'll have the third one tomorrow, and they'll have 2 out of 3 successes. And they talk a lot about monuments all around Europe, not just Newgrange, because it's how it fits into the scheme of what was going on in the world over 5,000 years ago.
Well, there's also the stones at Carnac in Brittany as well.
Yes.
Near the forest, the famed forest of Broseland.
Are they astronomically aligned, those ones?
I'm not sure, but I know that they were considered to be the same type as places like Stonehenge.
Right, because the academic who's on the Newgrange live transmissions last 2 days, a man called Frank Prendergast, who's given a few talks for Astronomy Ireland. He was professionally, he's a surveyor. He taught surveying in universities, but he has a pet interest of archaeoastronomy. And he told me there are 150,000 standing stones on this island. And he says one problem is, if that many stones, you're bound to find a certain number that line up with any feature you want: the solstice, midwinter, sunset, a sunrise, equinox, anything. And trying to prove that it's not just by chance you stumbled across this one with that random alignment, and that it really is astronomical. That's the tricky part. And that's actually what was done with Newgrange by Professor Tom Ray at the Dublin Institute of Advanced Studies, who not only showed it was lined up with the sunrise, but when you go back 5,000 years, because the precession of the Earth's orbit, the axis, that it would have been a perfect alignment back then. And the light would have gone all the way to the back of the chamber, whereas it falls a bit short these days, 5,000 years later. And the chance of that happening apparently was 300 to 1 against. And I can't remember where he published it. It might have been Nature, but it was certainly a very learned journal. And that copper fasten, Newgrange, is claimed to be really astronomically aligned.
Yeah, I actually heard Tom Ray. It's a video followed on when I was watching the one of the actual sun going down the passageway, and Tom Ray from DIAS, which is the Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies, he said something that the sun would have been a little bit further south back then, and that's how it would have shone exactly up to the whole end of the passage, whereas now it goes a little bit to one side. Would that be right?
Yes, and some of them, Frank said that the sun, I can't remember if it was left or right, east or south or north, but it was 2 sun diameters further along the horizon back 5,000 years ago, which is relatively easy to calculate once you know how long precession takes. But The other thing they pointed out in the chamber was that some of the stones in the walls, huge stones, taller than a human, are actually leaning in now, and it's reckoned it's because of the weight of all the material above.
Oh, right.
And it probably was even more spectacular back then. And that brings me to a funny story. When we had quite a few dealings with Patrick Moore when he was, well, first of all, he was the director of first director of Armagh Planetarium in the late 60s when it opened, because he knew the director of the professional observatory there, who had it built to stop the public ringing them up and asking what all these lights in the sky were every clear night, something astronomy on is well used to. And so they got all the funding for the planetarium. He asked Patrick to be the first director. This is, 10 years after he's launched the Sky at Night, so he's quite a celebrity by then. He agreed. He was there for a year or two, I think it was. Mm-hmm. And he became good friends with the third Earl, who built the great telescope Burr, the Leviathan of Parsonstown. And he told us about how when they went down the first time, it was all overgrown with weeds and everything else. And they pulled a lot of it off the stonework, but that had been damaged by this. And for, it was over 10 years, maybe 20 years, they sought funding. They eventually got £8 million for it. It was beautifully restored, opened just before the millennium began. Definitely a place to go and visit, not just for the 72-inch telescope, but also they have a fantastic science centre next door. So we've been talking to Patrick about all this. He has a great affinity for Ireland, lots of history over here as well. And we couldn't believe he had never been to Newgrange. So I think we had him in Ireland for his 70th birthday. We had a party for him. And so we took him up to Newgrange. And Patrick is actually a huge man. He's over 6 foot tall.
Yep.
And I won't comment on other dimensions of Patrick. But you have to crouch down to get up this passageway. And he recently hurt his back, I think, playing cricket, he told us at the time.
Yes.
And he couldn't actually get up the chamber. So I happen to know that Sir Patrick Moore has only been halfway inside Newgrange, because I was with him when he had the back out.
Yeah, I've met
so
Patrick
if you're over
twice.
6 foot tall, make sure you're limber.
Yeah, I've actually met Patrick twice. So yeah, I can attest to his height. The other thing I was going to say was, if you're really interested in some more of these sites, go to the megalithic portal on the web, because it has pictures and information pretty much about every megalithic site that's known to mankind, I think. It's megalithic.co.uk. But so I've used that site before. Because when I'm hill walking and stuff, I like to know if there's anything really interesting just off the beaten track. So I found places like Nannycatch in the Lake District. There's a stone circle just outside of Fishguard in southwest Wales, in Pembrokeshire. And most of the stones, some of the stones for Stonehenge, certainly came from Preseli Mountain.
Right. And it does it cover worldwide or just?
It covers worldwide.
Worldwide ancient sites. Yeah. Actually, isn't the oldest circle they've found somewhere in Africa? It was like 9,000 years old or something.
It wouldn't surprise me. We all came out of Africa at the beginning anyway.
Yeah. I've read something about it the last few months. I intended to get it into the magazine, but there's never enough room. It's still waiting in the wings somewhere.
Well, you've also got my photograph of the conjunction. Feel free to use that in the magazine, Anne.
Great, thanks.
There was. If you just if you put a mention into SLU as well, since it was on their telescopes, I took the picture.
Oh, of course.
Where's the telescope based? Is that Italy or do they have one in Canaries?
They're based in the Canary Islands. There's one in just outside Santiago in Chile, and they have a scope that's being put together in the UAE as well.
And where was the one you used?
I used the Canary Islands scope.
Right.
Which Canary is it?
It's on Mount Teide.
On Tenerife.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something else I was just going to look up the virtual telescope, because they normally always have a nice photo. Let's see if I can get it.
In fact, one of my friends actually tried to use them, I think, and wasn't very impressed. for the conjunction.
The virtual telescope.
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
Oh, because they're usually quite. They're not. I'm sure you probably know them from. They're great for comets and asteroids. But I'm not getting the right page here. What am I doing?
Well, I guess spaceweathergallery.com will be riddled with photographs by now from those lucky people who live where it's always clear.
There's an article going around about mysterious signals from Proxima Centauri.
Oh,
Really?
it was just today. Did you send that to me? Yeah.
Yes.
Is it a credible article?
It's in Scientific American.
Oh, that puts it up quite a few notches.
Looking at this, the story was broke on the 18th of December. Originally, it was leaked in the Guardian newspaper here in the UK. A mysterious signal coming from us, the closest star to our own, Proxima Centauri, too dim to be seen from Earth with the naked eye. It's only 4.2 light years away. Back garden, really, isn't it? It was found in archival data gathered last year. The signal seems to emanate from the direction of this neighbouring star. It can't be yet dismissed as Earth-based interference. Saying that it's an ETI technosignature, I think, is jumping the gun. It's at 982 megahertz. So it's a region typically clear of satellite and spacecraft signals.
The text was made by the $100 million project Breakthrough Listen.
Led by Simeon and founded by tech billionaire Yuri Milner.
I'm there now.
Yeah, it's interesting. So it's being looked at. So basically this started back really on the 29th of April 2019. They started collecting data. They've been using the Parkes Radio Telescope, famously featured in the film The Dish. Go watch it, it's a good film.
Into the Parkes Radio Telescope?
Yeah.
Yeah, actually with Patrick Moore in 1986, we went to see Halley's Comet from Australia.
Wow.
An incredible tour. We got to see not just the comet, but also Siding Spring Observatory.
Yeah.
Parkes Radio Telescope.
I've imaged out of there. Thank you, iTelescope.
So it'll be interesting to find out what it is. Presumably it isn't aliens. It never is it?
No, there's always there is a sensible and proper scientific answer out there.
Yeah, or as Dave says, mundane in the end.
Mundane's an awful lot better.
Jocelyn Bell Burnell's discovery of pulsars might be little green men. Turns out to be something equally as interesting.
Well,
absolutely, yeah. And an unknown phenomenon, something new that you're finding out.
But it has always surprised me when reputable scientists like Frank Drake said about the $100 million project they had with NASA in the 90s, that he said within 10 years, we will find evidence of extraterrestrial civilization. And when I read that in a NASA press release, I just checked the date wasn't April the 1st. So when a man of his stature said something like that, one has to wonder. And they're saying now, I'm sure you've heard this, that it's going to happen in our lifetime if they're out there.
If they're out there, and I'm wondering, have we missed them?
Have to reserve the front page. Go ahead.
I was going to say, have we missed them by 100,000 million years, or are they still evolving out of pools of amino acids yet?
Yeah,
that's my thought. Hayabusa 2 really brought home the pay dirt.
Yeah.
Of course, now we're just waiting for OSIRIS-REx to come home.
And have you any idea when they're going to release any preliminary results?
No.
Have they said that?
At the moment, JAXA...
Well, is it weeks, months, or years before we get a headline?
Probably months, maybe years. Because JAXA is going to be very, very careful and be very sure of its science. before I think they release anything. But I could be completely wrong. It could be they could find something, and it could be out there as a preliminary finding very, very quickly.
Yeah.
But I think
it would probably depend on. It would probably depend on what they find. If they find bugs crawling around in dust, I think that's suppressed amino acids, but it's some very simple building blocks that shouldn't really be there, but are. It's interesting chemistry. That's going to take a bit longer. Yeah.
But
it would be fascinating, though, to be a fly on the wall in their laboratory every day.
Oh, yes.
Unless it's all negative, in which case it'd be a very boring few months.
Well, I think the thing is, we're reevaluating what's really an asteroid and what's really a comet.
We had a fascinating talk there by Lawrence O'Rourke from the European Space Agency, formerly an Irishman, who found where the Philae lander bounced as it hopped across the comet. And there he was able to tell the structure of the comet. And I think in the question and answer session I said referred to it as styrofoam, but Leo Enright had a much better description. The surface of the comet is basically like candy floss. It's extremely weak and porous. That'll certainly distinguish it from asteroids that have at least coalesced together and fractionated themselves into metal cores and mantles above that. What the smaller ones look like that maybe didn't have enough gravity to do that will be quite interesting. But are they all giant comets that settle down into solid lumps?
Well, or are some of the items we see as regular asteroids comets that have lost their 99% of their volatiles, and perhaps may have a little bit left hidden underground, just waiting for a stress fracture to let it come out. We're hearing of rocks which are being rapidly reassessed and reclassified quite often, because suddenly it gets close enough to the sun. There's perhaps a collision, and there's a stress fracture, and suddenly it's emitting volatiles again.
Yeah.
So, was this a previously inert core that's now perhaps woken up a little bit, and it's giving its last little flutter and guttering of light before it is completely dead and extinguished? We don't know. And I think this is one reason we really should be going. There should be a mission to 29P SW1.
Yeah.
No, not London, not a London borough.
Giant comet.
And of course, it's an outburster.
Yeah.
And we know. And
very far from the sun, isn't it? Beyond Saturn?
No, it's the Jupiter family. It's a Jupiter family comet.
The Jupiter family.
SW1, yes. Swashman,
Watchman, yeah. You can pronounce it.
Yeah, it's one of my favourite ones. But we have a competition on Comet Watch to see who's going to get it. And I'm quite happy when I don't. But 73P SW2 is quite a dim thing. Very, very boring. But SW1, now, every now and again, it does have a fracture on its surface, and then it lights up for a little bit. It only comes up about a magnitude or so, but we know we're getting good at predicting it. Richard Miles is involved in a long-term project concerning SW1, and if you want to send him pictures, I really heartily advise that you send him luminance only. I sent him a full colour picture, and he asked me for the luminance afterwards because, as you pointed out, you can do more science with a luminance only image than you can with a full colour image, believe it or not.
Sorry, was this comment SW1 or SW2?
This is SW1.
SW1, yeah. Is there an SW2?
Yeah, 73P. Believe it or not, 73P is another SW.
Does that undergo outbursts as well, or?
Not to my knowledge.
No, right. So it's SW1 we're interested in, 29P. Right?
Yes, 29P is the really good one because it's Jupiter family. It has a fairly short period, and
I'm actually looking at it here. It's 14.8 years.
Yeah.
And it's semi-major axis. Average distance is 6.0 AU.
Oh, somebody as bad as I am.
5.7. Yeah. So just outside the orbit of Jupiter.
Yeah.
If something like that, that's a kind of short period comet. Will that eventually just run out of steam? I mean, every time it gets near the sun, it's outgassing loads of stuff. Will it eventually just peter out, or what happens?
Well, it doesn't get that close to the sun.
Yeah. Close to this 5.5 3/4 AU.
But still, it's outgassing something, isn't it?
And why it should do that so far out where it's very cold. Other comets usually get much closer before they start doing that. And it's doing this regularly. You hear probably several outbursts every year.
Yeah. But
so what's going on?
That's why we should be sending a space probe. We know how it reacts. We know what its period is for variability. So we can do a Rosetta style mission, and we can be sure that the spacecraft's going to be perfectly safe when it does decide to have an outburst. So it's just one of those lovely little comets that it does just give. It's like the Energizer Bunny. It just gives and gives and gives.
So, one of the things Larry noticed on 67P was that there was a big boulder while he was searching, looking for where Philae had landed. This boulder, over the period of time that he was looking, it moved. I don't know how far, but far enough away to be noticeable. Can you remember how far, David? No,
I don't remember the distance. No,
but it was.
Explain why he thinks it did.
Could note it was a big boulder, and it just moved on the comet's surface over the period of time that he was looking for. He wasn't looking for that. He was looking to try and find a trace, which he did, of where the comet kind of windmilled through a bit of ice and broke it off, and underneath was just this, as Leo called it, the candy floss. So you think this other now, SW1, is it?
Yeah.
Will be more, will be a different composition.
Well,
it's certainly unique, isn't it? A comet that's far from the sun, undergoing so much activity.
So it needs to be studied.
As far as I know, when it shouldn't, I can't remember, is it 3 or 4 AU most comets start to go events? And this thing is twice as far, which means it's 4 times less sunlight, and it's doing it regularly. Not just once, but regularly.
The only thing I can think of is it's Jupiter. It's being affected by Jupiter, and we know that the radiation environment around Jupiter is not particularly friendly, but is Jupiter stressing the comet at certain points sufficiently to cause a fracture for us to see an outburst?
But it would have to go fairly close then, wouldn't it?
Well,
and if I remember, it's in Aries at the moment. Not actually that far. Well, it's significant distance from Jupiter, maybe 90 degrees away.
Yeah.
But it's the idea when it lines up with Jupiter, as Saturn is, that maybe there's some kind of effect there, because Jupiter's magnetosphere extends all the way out to Saturn.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like, say, radiation being channeled in some way.
Or is it gravitational? It's to do with Jupiter's gravitational field.
I think it'd be too far away for that. Or maybe not. 5.2 versus 5.7. What's the inclination? The inclination is 9.36 degrees, so it's not very far out of the solar system.
But of course, the other one, and I know this is the one that Anne wanted us to discuss, is 2020 M3 Atlas.
Yes.
It's a late evening sky. It's in the late evening sky. It's amongst Orion, and it's actually bright enough to be seen through a pair of binoculars on a dark sky site. I know that Michael Yeager took a lovely image of it a few degrees west of the Orion Nebula, Messier 42. That was on November 8th. So the bit of the story is it was originally discovered on the 27th of June 2020 by ATLAS, which is the Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last Alert System. It's based on the Hawaiian Islands. And of course, the other one that was discovered by the program was 2019 Y4. Now, we all thought Y4 Atlas was going to be really spectacular, naked eye comet, hail bop, here's another one to match you. Nope, didn't happen. Because the sun started to play hardball, and the unyielding gravitational forces as it went around the sun just shredded it. So with this one, this one's already passed it's gone through perihelion, closest point to the sun. That was on October the 25th. It's survived intact. It's, as one person puts it, in fine fettle. It's a potential binocular visibility in dark skies. It was too far south in the summer for us to see it from UK shores. Even if you're at Chelsea, you wouldn't have a chance. And so it tracked through Sculptor and Fornax. Then in October, it took a northward turn into Lepus, and it passed into Orion in the beginning of November. So on the 14th, it was at its closest to the Earth. It passed a mere 33.3 million miles, or 53.6 million kilometers. So if you look at I will put a link from Astronomy Now magazine into the show notes. So it's slowly tracking. Well, in November it was in Orion. It's near Elanth on the 3rd of December. It's now in Auriga, and it's heading towards Capella by the 2nd of January of 2021. So it's a good opportunity if you've got good binoculars. If you've got a dark side, it's at about plus 7.8 to plus 8 magnitude. So it is around its predicted.
I think it's fading though, isn't it, Nick?
It's visually very diffuse.
That brilliant site we mentioned earlier, Arius.net, says it's fading away. I photographed it myself when it was near. I tried to get it near the Orion Nebula, but typically in Ireland it was cloudy those nights. But I got it when it passed the belt of Orion. And then I tried to photograph it when it passed the open clusters in the middle of Auriga, and it was cloudy that night too. So I might try to photograph it when it passes Capella.
Yeah.
I'm expecting clouds.
Well, it was at 3.4 when it passed Lambda Orionis. So it's on its. I don't know. I think it is fading a little bit. By the time
there's a graph there on Arius.
Yeah.
We have a picture of it in our magazine, actually. The one you were talking about, Michael Yeager's picture.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah. Gave us permission.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you've got binoculars, you've got a nice dark sky sight, go for it. It's probably a good chance to see a nice comet. It's really a fuzzy green blob, really. No spectacular tail to it. But I've noticed that recently. Most of the really good comets we've had have been diffuse comas, and there's no real tail to them.
Yeah.
But again, looking at Erithnet, this comet seems to be pretty much on the right place in the curve. I will put a link into Erithnet as well, because if you're really a serious imager observer, this is one of the places to be. I use Erithnet on the Sky Live to pull stuff up. I like the fact that with Sky Live, it will actually show you it against the actual sky background, and it will give you a good idea, depending on where you're imaging from, if it's visible. So I've got about 3 locations.
Well, that's at M3. It's going to pass Capella, easy enough to locate.
Yeah.
But also, I don't know if you've been following the sun grazer Erasmus 2020 S3, and it just appeared in the Soho cameras a few days ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I looked at it earlier today, and it's there with a nice little tail on it. So if you Google a Soho LASCO, LASCO C3 camera, or just go to the SOHO website and try and find it there. You'll navigate around for a while. Eventually, you'll find the LASCO camera, and it's updated several times a day, and you'll see the latest picture there. Nice little comet, too close to the sun for us to see, because that camera covers about 8 degrees away from the sun, so you're not going to see it naked eye or with a telescope. But at least we have a spacecraft now that monitors the sun and picks up these lovely comets going past.
I seem to remember I tried to image Erasmus.
Yeah, I tried one morning as well, but I think from our northerly latitude, it's too much. The elongation it has away from the sun is, if it's, let's say, 15 degrees, it's almost parallel to the horizon. So it's 15 degrees to the right of the rising sun, which means it's on the horizon at the same time the sun is rising. Not quite that bad, but it'd be nice if it was vertically above the sun when the sun rose. And unfortunately, you have to be near the equator to get that.
Yeah.
So people who live in Spain or the Canaries get much better views of these things. Usually, apart from with NEO-wise, we're actually in the ideal latitude for once.
Yeah. Of course, one to be looking out for is K2 Pan-STARRS.
Yeah.
I imaged
quite
that.
dim, though, isn't
it is quite dim at the moment. But I imaged that back on the 16th of August.
I'm just reading Arias. It says it's now magnitude 14.3.
Yeah.
Which is expected to brighten up to magnitude 5 or 6.
Yeah. Just put that.
2022 to 2023, though. So
yeah, there you
plenty
go.
Of warning.
I've put up a link to my picture of it. I had that was one I'd really had to do a plate solve on.
Oh, nice.
But I definitely found the comet. It's inside that little circle.
Oh yeah. How on earth did you see that?
I use Astromeca, and a lot of there are places on the net that would do plate solve for you. You upload your picture, and it will tell you exactly what you've got.
Oh, that's handy, isn't it?
Yeah. It was exactly the way I'd imaged it was for the comet to be dead center.
Yeah.
Right.
That's brilliant.
So,
really good. I mean,
I can see the tiny dot. Yeah.
Yeah.
To me, that's like Lawrence O'Rourke looking for for Philly, looking for the tracks.
I think I'll wait till it's closer to 5th magnitude.
Yeah, it's coming in. It's on its way in. So that's a comet really to keep an eye out for. It's going to get better over the next few years. Again, go to the ArithNet page, future comets, and he's got some good predictions for that comet and when to look for it.
I think the only problem is when it gets best, it dives south very quickly, doesn't it?
It does. Hang on, let me pull up. Let me pull up ArithNet.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now, and then it comes back up in 2024 through Orion. It passes through Orion's belt.
K2 Pan-STARRS, 13th magnitude by February 2021. 11th magnitude by September of that year. It's getting better. October 2021, SW 29 PSW1 at 13th magnitude. But it does get brighter. So 11th magnitude in September, and that is as of a midnight time. Erasmus is apparently magnitude 5, and M3 is magnitude 8. Excuse me. So, and of course, 141P Machholz 2 is currently at 11th magnitude, so I'll be going for that again next year. I do keep a list of comets I want to image.
I see on the 2017 K2 Pan-STARRS, the big one coming in 2022, that the perihelion distance is 1.8 AU.
Yeah.
So it doesn't get particularly close to the sun. Its brightness is going to depend on it being a big comet. I see the absolute magnitude is 1.0.
Yeah, because
which means it must be tens of kilometers across. If only it came close to the sun,
Yeah.
maybe 0.2 of an AU, we have a daylight comet.
Mm.
They never come close enough when you want them to.
And of course, in 2022, 67P comes up to 10th magnitude.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, it gets better. January is at 9th magnitude. 8th magnitude, November 2021. It's getting brighter. So the best time really to see 67P in the Northern Hemisphere is going to be November of next year.
Yeah, and we've got skin in the game there because Professor Susan McKenna Lawler, based out of Maynooth University, just outside Dublin, was one of the researchers involved with the Giotto probe that flew through the head of Halley's Comet.
I worked on that project.
Do you remember Susan McKenna Lawler?
No, I actually worked on the hardware. I worked on some of the hardware flight model.
Oh, very good.
She did like electrical support systems stuff.
Well, yeah, and she did some of the electronics, our company did some of the electronics for 67P, and we promised to show her the comet live, which she's never seen, through a telescope at some stage. So
next November we'll have to do that.
Next November, I've already thought about it. We must make contact with her and organise. She lives just outside Dublin. Our sky will be fairly dark, and a nice 8-inch, 9-inch telescope, fairly portable, would give her a decent view of the comet that she's actually got hardware on the surface at the moment.
16-inch plus Dob. That will definitely show you the comet.
Yeah.
You'll need help carrying that one.
We had a 21-inch at one stage, and the views of things like the Hercules cluster in that were absolutely breathtaking. And then you see these guys at the big American telescope conventions with 48-inch Dobsonians.
Yeah.
And you think, what must the views be like through those in a really dark sky as well?
Mm-hmm.
And that is another nice Irish link in that even to date, the biggest telescope in private hands ever is the 72-inch telescope at Burr in County Offaly.
Yeah.
There's a guy, you probably know about him in Ohio, who found a 70-inch mirror for sale at a government surplus auction.
Yes.
It was probably from a spy satellite. Nobody realized what it was, but it was some kind of big shaving mirror. And he knew what it was, bought it, and built a Dobsonian around it. I think about 2010 or so. And that will actually outperform the one in Burr, because the one in Burr only has a metal mirror that's not particularly reflective.
Yeah.
So the image will be brighter in his one.
Speculum, yeah.
And the big question is, with all these billionaires around, with all the Ferraris, and even, rock stars with lots of surplus money, there's a company in Canada I found that will build you a 65-inch telescope for just $750,000, less than the price of a Bugatti Veyron. I can't understand why all these car collectors don't have a big telescope sitting in the backyard as well, just for the kids to play with. Not one of them has got a telescope bigger than 70 inches. A bit of an unusual thing, finding a government surplus mirror that big, but the biggest other ones I could find in the world are 50-inch Dobsonians, 48, 50-inch, that kind of ilk.
Yeah.
And yet, here's a company that will make you a 65-inch. But don't contact them unless you're prepared to take a lot of emails, because when I expressed interest and we'd see if we could get funding for it, they bombarded me with emails. The sales team is very good. They dropped the price, by the way, so they're prepared to negotiate on price. I just hope they survive the pandemic. They're still around, and we do get the $750,000 funding.
Yeah.
Well, there's certainly such an upsurge of interest in astronomy in the last 12 months, particularly since lockdown. So I think most telescope companies are flat out trying to supply for Christmas.
Well,
I heard there was a shortage. Yeah.
Well, not only that, finding a good, decent second-hand telescope is impossible because they've all been cleaned off eBay as well.
Yeah. I imagine after Christmas there's going to be a few, because we do little, free ads for sale for second-hand telescopes. And I'd imagine there'll be a few now after Christmas who won't have come to grips with how to use it. And then, it'll be gathering dust and eventually they'll sell it. It might take a few months. Well,
the interesting thing is saying this, to be honest, and I know I've said this on the Astronomy Ireland Facebook page, if you're getting into astronomy, don't buy a telescope straight away. Buy a big pair of binoculars and a tripod.
Yeah.
Because if you get fed up with astronomy, you can use them for other things. you can't use a telescope really for anything else but astronomy. So
Yeah.
start off.
Thanks to the Chinese, they've become very cheap.
Yeah.
We won't mention the German, what we'll call them, German multi supermarkets, but they're selling 10 by 50 binoculars of decent quality for 20 quid.
Yeah.
And you can't go wrong for 20 quid. If I drop mine, I don't really worry about it. I actually bought 10. I just get a new one out of the box. They're a disposable item now.
Yeah.
Whereas I dropped my Zeiss 7 by 50 binoculars, and I was quite forlorn for a long time.
Well, I've got a pair of 20 by 80 Zoom HAL binoculars for astronomy. If I drop them, I'll be upset because they cost me a bit of money.
Yeah.
Because they came with a very good tripod.
Yeah, I paid 300 quid in the 80s for one of those.
Yes.
Wow.
And I still paid over 200 quid.
And you get a lot cheaper now, Chinese ones. And of course, Celestial now are doing up to 100 millimeter binoculars. That's 2 4-inch refractors, one for each eye. They're a bit heavy though.
And let's face it, George Alcock, the astronomer who discovered who did also do variable star work and stuff, used an old pair of World War II binoculars from inside his house, and he discovered comets.
Yeah, and they were 50 millimeter binoculars, weren't
they? Yeah,
which you could buy now in a certain shop for 20 quid.
Yeah.
I find them great. I always recommend that to people to start off with some, like extra long, for want of a better word, binoculars, and just start off, especially with kids. Don't necessarily get them started on a telescope first.
I'd said that very thing on BBC Radio Foil today. They said, "What's the best telescope to get for astronomy?" And I said, "Binoculars." One word, and then we explained why. So it's still a message people don't know. Start off with the binoculars.
Yep.
You can always get a bigger telescope later.
Yeah. And if you hold the binoculars, if you hold your hands at the very end, the opposite end to where your eyes are, it's much easier to hold them steady. It's a little tip. So you don't get wobbles, Doesn't
hurt your wrists as much.
Yeah, exactly.
Especially the giant ones, you basically hold the objectives. That's where all the weight is.
Yeah, the other thing I recommend is go to a star party and see what they're using for what. If you're still keen, you want to buy a telescope, decide what you're going to do. Are you going to do planets? Are you going to do the moon, deep sky, comets, or what? And then go to a star party and talk to the people at the star party who've got their equipment set up to do, whether they're doing their imaging or visual observations, or they're letting people step up to the eyepiece to have a look at whatever. Because otherwise, you may buy a telescope that is certainly not suitable for what you want to do. I've got a 16-inch Dob. I'm waiting for the go-to kit to come out, because as soon as that comes out, that will be fitted. And I'll be in business again in comets. For now, I will be happy looking at the moon. The moon has always been my main thing. I got into imaging comets back in 2007, 13 years ago.
What comet inspired you to do that?
I think the comet at the time was Comet Holmes.
Oh yes, yeah. That was an incredible object.
Yeah, in fact, I actually I do have one of my pictures available. Where is it? Let me scroll up.
Well, while you're looking for it, I'll endorse what you said about going to a star party. The problem is all of our restrictions and social distancing. We had to cancel our big one in September, but we've just set the date in the hope that things will be back to normal. The 2021 star party, which is called Starbecue, the biggest star party in Ireland every year, and set for September 4th. We might get you over for that, Nick.
Yeah, you may well do, actually.
We always have a few speakers. You might want to brush up on that black hole talk you gave on astronomy.fm.
As I say,
That's an idea.
I screenshotted, because it's very difficult to read a mathematical equation out on the show. But if you can upload it as a link, so you can share the actual equation. Then you can explain what you're talking about, and that's basically what I did. I have got a notepad where I have all the links to my images. All my stuff is on Flickr. So that's how. I've also got an AstroBin account, which I pay for. I don't really use that as much, but as I say, it's just one of those things. Come on, where is that link? First quarter moon, F3 Neowise, F8 Swan. I did get an image of F8 Swan, and I've got one of Y4 Atlas. I've got several of Y4 Atlas actually. That was definitely a fun one. But as I say, at the time in 2007, everybody was talking about Comet Holmes, and it was, yeah,
it reached third magnitude or something, wasn't it?
But I took out a subscription. I had a trial subscription with an online telescope company, which is actually the one I'm still using. 13 years later, I'm still with them. But as I say, it's been a journey. I think I've imaged all kinds of things. I have tons of lunar images. The last time I checked, I have over 2,789 images.
But not of the moon.
Not just of the moon, but of everything, all kinds. If it had been in the moon, I'd be out doing Patrick, who was actually a visual observer and sketcher. Okay, there we go. So David and Anne can now see the picture. Back in 2007, Comet Holmes.
Oh yeah, there it is.
Wow.
That was the 11th. That was the 18th of November, 2007.
Fantastic. Really good.
I'm trying to remember why it did that. There was an explanation for its outburst, wasn't there?
Shape.
Yeah, I can't remember what it. I don't quite remember what happened, but it was certainly something very spectacular.
Yeah. But yeah, it flared up by, I don't know, 10 magnitudes or something.
Mm-hmm.
Ridiculously large amount compared to, say, 29p SW1.
Yeah.
Where we're talking about one or two magnitudes.
Yeah.
This thing came from nothing to this naked-eye comet.
There's another one for you of Comet Holmes from the same year.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, so there's two different. Yeah.
Bigger and more diffuse.
But they're actually both taken on the same day. It's just a different telescope.
Okay.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, sort of a hood around it, isn't there? Yeah.
But one's an ultra wide field image. The other one's a wide field, regular wide field image.
So it was. How much of the sky was it filling with all its dust and debris?
Do you remember being the order of the full moon or something?
Wow.
Size.
People were taking beauty shots as it passed various things like the North American Nebula and stuff.
I can imagine, yeah. It's gorgeous.
But yeah, as I say, comets are addictive. They're very addictive. Actually, I think they're worse than alcohol for addiction.
Yeah, I remember.
Something like Neowise. Yeah. That was very exciting, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'll never forget the first time I took a picture of it. I could see it in the sky, and I thought, right, a quick test exposure at ridiculously high ISO just to center it in the frame. And after a few seconds, probably 25,000 ISO or something, after a few seconds, the camera displayed the image on the little 3-inch screen. And I was expecting to see a small smudge that I'd need to center up and then take a really long exposure. And the whole frame was covered in comet. I nearly passed out.
Fantastic, yeah.
Absolutely amazing.
Okay, here's one for you. Let me find. Yeah, this is Neowise. F3. F3 Neowise.
Did you take it locally or a remote scope?
For quite a long time I've had to work remote, because for a long time I was living in a city adjacent to Albany, New York, and basically the light pollution is
not good for astronomy.
Yeah, but that's F3 Neowise. This is from this year. Yeah.
Great. David, how did you get into astronomy? Like, what was your first?
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to blow everything up. So I wanted to make explosives. And a friend of mine had a chemistry set. So one in school. So one lunchtime, we went back to his house to have a look at this chemistry set so I could see if I was going to get one of those for Christmas. In the corner of his room, he had a telescope. And they were very rare back then because the Japanese made them at ridiculously high prices. So I was fascinated with this telescope. I'd never seen one. I asked him, what can he see with it? I remember him telling me he could see Jupiter with it. I said, I come back tonight, can we have a look at Jupiter? And he says, no, it's gone. Have a look at the chemistry set. That's what we're here for. And I said, well, where did it go? So, and how do you know about all this? And he told me there were books in the school library. And we managed to get back just before lunch ended and the library was being operated. I took a book out called The Universe and it blew my mind. I stopped blowing things up and started looking at things that explode in space instead.
Oh, wow. Amazing. Just, it was kind of a chance thing, really, in a way.
Yeah. From chemistry, basically, to physics.
Wow. Well, I have a vague memory of my parents getting me to look at a partial solar eclipse, sometime in the 1960s. I don't remember which one or where, but I used to take my little brothers to the barbers on the bus. I was only about 10, and they'd be getting their haircut, and I'd be looking at, there was a magazine rack, and there was Ireland's own magazine, which is kind of a very, almost, I suppose you can nearly call it parochial kind of a magazine. Nice, but there was a thing in it about Halley's Comet, and it was going to be coming in 20 years' time. And I remember saying, I'll have to remember this. And I was so fascinated. I think that's where I got my first interest. So it was a comet that got me into it first.
Well, I'm curious enough, shortly after I got interested, Kohoutek's comet came along.
Now, there was a comet.
Oh, yeah.
I remember getting a pair of binoculars to go out and try and see it. And I thought I saw it, being a kid. But I now realize I was actually watching a satellite flying over every night.
I just put a image into our chat.
That's a nice one of Comet Swan. It's lovely. It's really
nice. Very nice.
F8 Swan, which we never really got to see up here in the north.
Yeah. Like, what was that comet that was naked eye? I saw Comet McNaught in broad daylight in Ireland. And then it goes south and puts on that spectacular show that it did. Again, it's not fair, is it?
Neil and I keep threatening to invade Australia because of all the great comets they get.
We were lucky with Neo ones.
But see, their advantage is that they're actually really on close to the equator. They're 33 degrees south.
Yeah.
They're an awful lot closer than we are. They're roughly Canary Islands latitudes. So they're not really, well, they are in the southern hemisphere, but we're very deep in the northern hemisphere. So things have to be unusual for us to get the best view, like Neo-Eyes. So maybe we won't complain about that one.
Yes.
Something.
If you want to view comets or even planets, the best place is you have to live on the equator. My dream home would be one of the Caribbean islands. Some of them apparently have incredible seeing due to the laminar flow of the air across the ocean. I've heard of star parties there with giant dobs and people using 1,000 times magnification and crying out for more power.
But you know what we get that they don't have further south is noctilucent clouds.
True.
You have to think of the nice good things we get, and the odd.
Maybe the aurora. Yeah.
In fact, I just got a notification there just saying that KP had reached its maximum. It was just a little alert that came up and it disappeared before I had time to read it. But I don't know where it pops up from. I can't get it.
We weren't expecting that till day after tomorrow.
Oh, David's gone.
Okay.
You going to call him then?
Yep.
Okay. We should probably wrap up soon anyway, but...
Yes.
It's getting late. My husband's going to bed without me.
We're calling David back, but he's unavailable. He's gone unavailable.
Oh. Maybe phone died or his battery died.
Possibly.
He's on his laptop.
We've done 2 hours, Anne.
Yeah, so we're probably done.
He's back.
Oh, he's back.
Yeah, press the wrong button.
They were saying, well, we should probably wrap up now anyway.
Yeah.
One thing that we never mentioned, I know they're not as good as the Geminids, the Ursid meteor shower.
Mm.
That will be on till the day after Christmas, is it?
Yeah.
You call it Boxing Day, we call it St. Stephen's Day.
The outbursts, some outbursts predicted this year.
Oh, right. Oh. They'll probably be too late now for us, but they're not as good though, sure. They're not like
they're quite poor as a standard meteor shower, but if they have an outburst, well, the gloves are off. Anything could happen.
Yeah.
I believe there's 4 or 5 different outbursts. I can't remember where I read that. It might have been space.com. I'm sure it's on the IMO.net website. And there were 2, I think, outbursts that were possibly intense.
All right. So
predicting these trails of dense debris from decades to centuries ago is that apparently they can get the time accurate quite well, but the actual intensity is still eluding people.
That's all right, David.
You never know if you're going to get a great show or not.
That's all right. I was being asked if the meteor showers are brilliant, do we have to look out for triffids the next day?
Yeah.
Well,
if we get an intense meteor shower, I'll put up with the triffids.
Anyway, you can kill them with seawater. So it's
yes,
exactly what I was going to say. Maybe a bottle of holy water would work as well.
Well, yeah, you're saying about what you call Boxing Day something different. I still call Halloween Samhain.
Oh, really?
Yes. To me, it's Samhain. It's not Halloween. It's Samhain. That's what I've always called it.
Oh, that's amazing. As I know, when we were kids, I had cousins in England, and they didn't really have Halloween at all, and now it seems to be a worldwide thing.
Yes, the Americans have exported it to us, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, it came from Ireland originally, obviously with Samhain, and then the Americans, ran away with it like they did with the Christmas tree from Germany and so on.
Well, that was down to Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg-Gotha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I
I'm just looking at spaceweather.com, and the auroral oval doesn't look that angry.
It's still a wee bit further north. My friend Black Projects, that's his Twitter handle. That's what he's known as when he's to come into the AFM chat rooms. He sends me the oval information and everything. Being a radio amateur as well, I have this neat little desktop item that tells me the solar wind and everything else, the X-ray AG, the X-ray flux, aurora is N at 1.99. So if you're into aurora scatter communications, not really much. But all the solar terrestrial data, being a radio amateur, was always a great use to me for DX.
We live in hope of the aurora.
Yes.
But I just looked at spaceweather.com, and further down the page, they have an incredible image of where we started, Jupiter and Saturn.
Oh, gosh. I see it.
One Eiffel Tower, but below that, my goodness. So somebody from Malaysia, Michael Chio.
Heng A Observatory in Penang.
Yeah.
You should be able to pronounce that properly now, Nick.
I'm getting there. I'm getting better. It took me a long time.
Oh, look at the moon. Oh, that's gorgeous.
Oh, he stacked 500 of 1,000 frames.
Oh, wow, it's brilliant. It's beautiful. I mean, detail on Jupiter.
Oh, yeah, when you're clicking up for full screen, it is amazing. Now, that's the picture I wanted to get. If only it had been clear.
I'm happy with the picture I got. I got a picture of the Great Conjunction.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are bringing in the Star of Bethlehem and everything about it, but doesn't quite fit in time-wise for the last great conjunctions. Because a lot of people thought it was the Star of Bethlehem as well. I know that was covered on the sky at night, as was the Great Conjunction, the Star of Bethlehem. So it is rather topical for this time of year as well.
Yeah, that's an incredible picture. I managed to get pictures yesterday from Ireland. Unfortunately, very windy, and my telescope was shaking like a leaf. So I can just marvel at this picture I'm looking at now and thinking, well, at least somebody's got a result.
Yeah. I actually had my laptop on the dining table, so as I was eating, I was flicking between the half-meter telescope and one of the 14-inch telescopes, just so I could get the picture, get my picture of the Great Conjunction, and I've got it. I'm happy.
Yeah. I'll have to wait till 28. But tomorrow won't be too bad. 9 arc minutes apart. I hope. I'm just on double check now. You have me doubting myself. For 5 p.m. on the 22nd. This is an old version of the sky.
Yeah.
And the separation of Jupiter and Saturn is 8 arc minutes. It's wider than the 6 tonight.
Yeah.
And 8 arc minutes is very decent for the last. I remember the first time I picked the two up in the same field of view. Now I can get them. I was looking at them in daylight a few days ago at 150 times magnification, with Jupiter at the center of the field of view, and Saturn is only halfway from the center towards the edge. Relatively high magnification. I can't remember what they were then. 21 arc minutes, I think. So 8 arc minutes tomorrow will do me fine, and I believe the weather forecast is good.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to see what they missed because of the rain, that picture by Michael Teo, is it Teo or Teo? Is absolutely
Teoh. At least we can spell it for him.
Yeah, on the spaceweather.com gallery. Oh gosh.
I've got a feeling I know this person. Oh no, I know someone with that surname in one of the local astronomical communities.
Oh, you'll have to let us know about that then. Just I want to let you know something a bit, ironic maybe, that the skies are really clear, crystal clear now.
Right, time to go out.
Not seeing the conjunction from here earlier because of the rain and the wind and the clouds.
And in fact, the moon sets around midnight, and then Mars is only a few arc minutes away from 11th magnitude galaxy. I photographed it last night.
Oh, right.
In 8-inch, so I might go out and try and snap it. It's a bit closer tonight, at the same distance tomorrow night.
And on the 23rd, then it'll be near the moon.
Then near the moon, yeah.
And then the 26th, moon near the Pleiades.
Yeah, and maybe some Ursids tonight, and then the Quadrantids on, is it January the 3rd?
Yep.
Oh, it's plenty.
Loads to see. And this conjunction, what I've been telling people on radio today was, if you hold your little finger up at arm's length, you can cover the 2 planets until New Year's Eve.
Yeah.
And that's a spectacular conjunction anyway.
Oh, yes.
In fact, the next 20-year conjunction, that's roughly how far apart they'll be. So they're closer from now until New Year's Eve than they will be at 2040. And we have the next Jupiter-Saturn conjunction.
Great.
So enjoy.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we better let David go out and photograph before it disappears.
Thanks very much, guys.
Yes, and I'm going to go to bed. It's actually gone a quarter to midnight.
Oh dear.
We actually started talking at 9 o'clock. We started recording at 9:31 in the GMT. I'm old-fashioned. I grew up as GMT. I know it's I know that everybody says it's universal time coordinated now. But anyway, so it just shows you how much fun we have making these shows. So
how much we have to cover with a universe this big.
Yes,
absolutely. I don't think we'd ever run out of topics, ever.
No, we didn't talk about ISS. We didn't talk about Starlinks.
Yeah, we avoided all of those.
Yeah.
Iridium, we could have spoken about Iridium. They're all gone.
Yeah, they're all gone, yeah. I miss them.
Yeah, they were nice, those little flashes in the night.
But yes, as I say, I think we need to get this show on BBC Radio across the network somehow, or even Irish Radio. How about that?
Yeah, the dead of night when only astronomers are listening.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Very good.
Something to do on a cloudy night. There's the title of the show.
Yes, yeah. Oh, it's a pity Neil couldn't join us tonight, but he'll be back next time.
Yes, and he'll listen to the show, and he'll enjoy. He'll have a good laugh about it. But
well, Nick, keep your dance card free for September the 4th next year.
Yeah, September the 4th. Okay.
Yes.
We'll get you into the Wicklow Mountains south of Dublin. We've had Chris Lintop there. Did we have Pete Lawrence? I think we did.
Lawrence, yeah. We had Paul Abel. We've had a good few, and not Andy. We had Andy Briggs in our normal.
I'm trying to think of other Sky at Night presenters. The only person we haven't had over in Ireland is Maggie Adair and Poco.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, have you seen her on our list? Have you seen her on? She was doing one of the quiz shows recently.
No, which one?
It was that one that's based on with the pie, Trivial Pursuit.
Oh. No, I haven't seen that.
She was absolutely brilliant.
Really? No, I haven't really seen her on anything else other than the Sky at Night, but yeah, she's a good character.
Yep. There is a YouTube video of one of her shows she did about why the moon is so important to us.
Oh.
Yes, I saw that, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've also got her book about the moon and how she got into astronomy and everything. So that's a good. If you really you need a very urgent Christmas present for the young person in your family who's into astronomy, go on to youknowwho.com and put in Maggie's name. There is a lovely little book. It's full of personal anecdotes, and it tells you how she got into astronomy, how she actually beat dyslexia to become a scientist.
Wow.
Very good. I'll tell you, if you have a link to her quiz show, please send that one on.
It should be on iPlayer. If you can access iPlayer.
I can, yeah.
I forget the name of the show now. I'll try and find the name of the show for you, and I'll pop you a message. Send me a friend request on Facebook, David, as well.
I'm not a Facebook user, would you believe?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I've managed to avoid it because I'd never get anything done if I was on social. Anne does all that for us. And a guy called Kevin Kennedy, looks after Twitter. And a few other people, good few other people as well.
Oh, well, I've got you on Skype now, so as soon as I find it, I'll find the information.
Message me on Skype, and email's easy enough. editor@astronomy.ie.
Okay. So anyway, we've done it again. We've gone on and on. So I think this is probably a good time to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And I'm going to take a leaf out of the great Dave Allen's book and say, may your God go with you.
Very good.
Take care, Nick. Nice talking to you.
Yeah. Thanks
Good
very
night.
much. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Merry Christmas.
Good night, everyone.